Hello and welcome to the Building an Indie Business podcast with SupremeRumHam. I'm your host, Alex. Today, I wanted to discuss Twitter and how I've been using Twitter to grow my following on Twitter. I will be discussing the 3 things I've been doing to grow my following on Twitter and the 2 problems that I've found that I've run into while doing this. But first, I want to discuss some general podcast things. There's the Patreon page and the Buy Me a Coffee page, which are for improving the podcast. So if you get value out of this podcast and you want to donate some money, all that money that you donate will go directly into the podcast, back into it. So if I need new equipment or new software for the podcast, I will use that money from Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee to pay for the equipment or software. Okay, so let's get into it. Twitter. So the first thing I've been doing to grow my following on Twitter is tweet tips from the books I've been reading, or tweet interesting things that I read from the books I'm reading. So right now, I have been reading Accessibility for Everyone, and I've been tweeting simple accessibility tips that the book gives me. So like, after 66 characters in a sentence, people need to turn their heads, making it a little harder for them to read, or it just might be too many characters that you've used in your sentence. So that's one example. Okay. The next thing I have been doing is I have been recommending podcasts to people. And I do this because I'm building a podcast recommendation engine, I guess. And I felt that to get it started, I should tweet my own podcast recommendations. And so that way, when I'm ready to fill the podcasting directory with recommendations, I can fill it up a bunch with my own. Okay. So the next thing I have been doing is I tweet progress pictures of the podcast directory and the CSS. And this is because I tell people that I am a designer and I'm learning design, and I want to help people learn design. Okay, so I have been deciding whether or not to start tweeting about podcasting and giving podcasting tips to my followers. I don't know if anyone is following me for podcasting tips, but I might start doing that as well. So the problems that I've run into while doing this new experiment, I've been doing it since about June, middle of May maybe, is that the books I read aren't always interesting to my followers. So sometimes I might not have books to tweet from that will help me grow my following. So recently I was reading a book called Black Edge, which is a finance book. And so I don't tweet about finance usually, but I have an interest in it. So I just didn't tweet anything about the book for a while, and that made it look like I'm not active on Twitter. So that's a problem that I've run into. Another thing that I've run into, problem, is that people might be following me for podcast recommendations, and then I tweet about design tips, and then they're not interested in that, so they unfollow me. So yeah, I have to figure out what is the mix of tweets that I can have that is satisfactory to everyone following me. Okay, that's how I've been using Twitter. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day. Bye.